A fairly interesting rules preview for the next 3 codexes today. We've got some stat lines and weapon profiles for the troops for the Tau, Genestealer Cult, and the Custodes. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today we're just taking a look at a few revealed rules from Warhammer community, and perhaps a bit unusually for them, rather than just focusing one faction, they've shown off a few small upgrades for each of these next 3 factions. As they announced a week or so back, these codexes are all going to be pushed back to 2022 now. It sounds like the Custodes and the Genestealer Cult will be coming in fairly early January, and then the Tau following a few weeks after them. The Custodes and the Genestealer Cult are still getting their Shadow Throne box coming out in December though, the big versus box between the 2 factions. In any case, it's fun to get a look at some of the new rules, so let's take a look at what we've got. We'll start with the Custodes, then do the Genestealer Cults and the Tau. So first up, as they'd kind of hinted, Custodes are going to be getting a leadership increase. They mentioned in one of their previous previews that the Blade Champion was going to be a Mighty Leadership 11, not really all that relevant on most characters, but it did make me wonder whether or not standard Custodes might be getting a leadership boost too. I guess they might be leadership 10, seeing as characters were +1 leadership, but that seems not to be the case. They just seem to have army-wide leadership 11 now, which most of the time will make running away utterly inconceivable to them. Even if you've got quite a big chunky unit of something like Custodian Guard, you'll need both to take many casualties and also have some decent leadership debuffs on them before any of them will even be at risk of running. And even then, for 2 command points you could well just auto-pass them. It might well be worth it if you've got the chance of losing some very expensive models. It is yet another step in making morale just not really all that meaningful, another faction that doesn't really care about it too much. Though I must admit, for Custodes it does kind of fit with their lore. They are just about the most elite fighting force in the galaxy. You just don't expect them to see them dropping their weapons and fleeing in fear. Next we have a couple of buffs to their war gear. We don't know the actual profile of the Custodes yet, and we'll be really interested to see whether or not they stay at 3 wounds or go up to 4. But basically both the Sentinel Blade and the Guardian Spear have had a few small changes. Both of those weapons are now flat damage 2 rather than D3 damage. That does seem to be a design philosophy of Games Workshop's now. If you've got an entire squad armed with a weapon, most of the time they don't get random damage weapons. Damage D3 weapons tend to be more prevalent on characters, and flat damage 2 more prevalent on big squads. Overall, I'd say that this is a bit of a side grade. It will make them more efficient at killing any 2 wound infantry out there, things like standard Space Marines, but will make them less efficient against things with 3 wounds. Though to be honest, perhaps the most important thing is that damage 2 weapons are just a little bit less effective than damage 3 against anything that's got -1 damage. Say things like Dreadnoughts, Death Guard, Orc Boggies, that kind of thing. At least with the damage 3 you've got a small chance of rolling a 3 and then punching 2 damage through. Still, overall though, I'd say that these weapons are still getting better. They both have +1 strength compared with before, so that'll make your Guardian Spears all the way up to strength 7, and the Sentinel Blades up to strength 6. DW did inadvertently confirm that at least they won't be getting any other strength boost, so standard Custodes should still be strength 5. Both of those are quite nice changes though. They won't be relevant against everything, but there's certainly plenty of toughness 5 and toughness 6 targets in the meta at the moment that they'll really like that boost against. Finally, they say that they've slightly buffed the Sentinel Blade's shooting profile. It used to be Pistol 2, Strength 4, AP 0 and Damage 1. Basically it's gained a pip of AP and flat 2 damage to bring it a bit more in line with the Sentinel Blade's profile. Now rather than just being a bit shorter ranged and weaker, it will now just be shorter ranged but not weaker in terms of actual damage. As it's a pistol weapon, that is going to give the Custodian Guard with the Storm Shields a legitimately scary round of pistol firepower. A few interesting changes there. Maybe the changes to their army-wide rules will be the most interesting, particularly any things that they can get like their own special chapter tactics they're getting for their shield companies. I'm sure that they'll be more relevant on the Custodes troops than plenty of other places. Moving on, we come to the Genestealer Cults, and the headline news for them today is that their Acolyte hybrids will be getting a small toughness boost, going from toughness 3 to toughness 4. At the moment they certainly hit pretty hard for their points cost, but with only toughness 3 and a 5+ armor save, they do tend to die to absolutely anything, including plenty of incidental casualties from things like Overwatch, or even just the enemy's basic troops hitting them back in combat if you don't manage to fully wipe them. Toughness 4 should help mitigate that a little bit. Things like lasguns, bolters, and strength 6 weaponry won't bring them down quite as easily. Though to be honest, I still can't see them being particularly durable for the points cost even with this. Hopefully that doesn't come with a points cost increase. I think the Genestealer Cult Codex just in general needs a bit of a buff. The other interesting option that the squad has gained is that their cult icon has changed in rules somewhat. Previously, having a cult icon allowed you to reroll hit rolls of 1 in melee, so it basically gave them a damage boost, and a fairly cheaply pointed one at only a cost of 10 points. Certainly if you had a big meaty squad of acolytes jumping out of cult ambush, a 10-point upgrade seemed like a pretty reasonable one, as it makes the entire squad just hit a bit harder. Now though, it seems that cult icons allow you to do something called Summon the Cult. This looks like it's going to be a new mechanic throughout the Genestealer Cult Codex. Perhaps there might be other things that allow you to summon the cult better, or maybe psychic powers that allow you to do so. In any case, apparently for Acolyte hybrids, that means that you regenerate D3 models to the unit when you activate it in the command phase, and depending on how many points it costs, that could potentially be a really good deal. Setting up more models onto the field is no bad thing. Currently, with Acolyte hybrids costing 8 points, that means that if your squad was injured, you could be regenerating around about 15 points per turn, so if it costs the same or less than that, then that could be pretty reasonable. It might also allow some very slightly gamey shenanigans you might be able to do, in a similar way to things like Necron resurrection protocols. Maybe sneaking more models closer towards objectives or the enemy. It might help you get there just a little bit easier. It sounds like this might be one to consider in large squads, but you probably don't want to use in small ones. You're kind of gambling on the units being damaged but not outright destroyed, and I think that with a lot of these fragile, hard-hitting melee units, you're often going to be hitting hard with them and then getting hit very hard back in return, potentially you losing the entire squad in one go. It does mean that you just might have a bit of a waste bringing a cult icon along if there's a good chance that you're not going to be able to use it. It'll be interesting to see how much it costs, and also the Summon the Cult mechanic when the codex comes out. Finally, we have the Tau Empire, and the rules that they've chosen to preview are the new stat lines for the pulse carbines and pulse rifles, two of the bits that I was really quite interested in seeing what they would do with in the new book. For guns that are supposed to be some of the best small arms in 40k, they were feeling really quite underwhelming right now. Mass Fire Warriors just generally not being a particularly competitive build for the Tau. First up, the Pulse Carbine, they seem to have gone with a range increase. It used to be 18 inches Assault 2, Strength 5, AP 0 and Damage 1, and it's now gone up to be a 24-inch range weapon with the same Strength, AP and Damage. If the points remain the same, that is a fairly decent boost. 18 inches was really quite limiting. You might well be struggling for targets, have half the squad out of range, or be forced to move the squad closer than you wanted to get them in range of the enemy. 24 inches certainly helps that, but personally I'm still not convinced they're going to outcompete Pulse Rifles, particularly not with their new profile. The new Pulse Rifle stat line is now 36 inches, Rapid Fire 1, Strength 5, AP -1 and Damage 1, so basically it's gained an extra 6-inch range and also AP -1 on its shots rather than AP 0. Overall I quite like the change, it's certainly a big upgrade compared with previously. The extra range is kind of nice. I think it might actually be more relevant for slightly extending the rapid fire range of the gun. You'll now be able to double tap all the way out to 18 inches, which is quite a decent threat range. The AP actually allows it to hit somewhat hard now. At least it's not going to feel quite as underwhelming when you've pointed at power armor, and it might well be competing a bit better against the breacher teams, who tend to see a lot more play than the strike teams in 40k right now. It's definitely a nice buff all round to the Pulse Rifle, though personally I'm not sure if on its own it might be enough to actually see large amounts of Fire Warriors being played, in the same way as say the Admech troops were played after their codex dropped. Just on the flat profile of the weapon, I can't help but think that Skitarii Rangers still seem a little bit more threatening to me. I think I'd rather have Strength 4 and lower range, and then get those 2 shots all the way out to their very decent range. I think how good the Fire Warriors turn out to be is going to depend on the army synergies, what buffs they can get from things like septs, marker lights and stratagems. I definitely look forward to finding out though. It'd certainly be cool to see a fair few more Fire Warriors on the table. So let me know what you think of the rules previews down in the comments below. Is this going to be enough to help Custodes compete, or are you looking to drown the foe in waves of pulse fire? If you've enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, where I'll certainly keep the regular 40k videos coming, including any news of Games Workshop's new rules and releases. Finally, if you'd like to help support the channel, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page, and that's down in the video description below. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things happen next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways, with a chance to win some really big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, then the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.